What is that one book that absolutely changed your life? Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. The things other people have put into my head, at any rate, do not fit together nicely, are often useless and ugly, are out of proportion with one another, are out of proportion with life as it really is outside my head. The thing about Vonnegut is he can have say such profound things, then in the same book have an aside where he lists the penis lengths of every male character and draws his own asshole. I love Vonnegut so much. Lamau. If you liked Bach, I highly recommend Bluebeard, novel, or Welcome to the Monkey House, short stories. Sirens of Titan. As a teenager while listening to the first Ultra Chilled album was one of my favorite experiences. Ended up buying every Vonnegut book in those cool editions they released in the late 90s with the stylized V. Going to Barnes & Noble to buy my new book with my money from sweeping the movie theater was a great experience. Wanna throw out a personal favorite Vonnegut book that I don't see mentioned much, Galapagos. Very neat book diving into how the human urge to improve things can backfire, and maybe humanity would benefit from just chilling a bit more. I have his asshole tattooed on my leg. You know, in case I ever forget. I read Harrison Bergeron in high school and it completely changed the way I looked at reading. I came here to say this or Artemis Fowl. I read the shit out of those books. Also, Netflix is making a Redwall movie and I can't put into words how excited I am. Also Harry Potter, like most people. But it was cool when I was 11 and the first book came out. And by the time it was no longer cool I was already 4 books deep and I wasn't about to stop. Haha. Narnia was this for me. Rereading it now like 25 years later and it's as inspiring as it was back then. I had a friend complaining it was too simplistic in its writing and didn't challenge her. I was like, these were literally written for 10-year-olds, chill out. Brian Jacques came to my school when I was a child to speak and read a portion of Redwall to us. I was already a huge fan and I felt like such a dummy when he said Matthias's name. I realized I had been pronouncing it wrong in my head the entire time, Matthews instead of Matthias. Doe. Hung my head when he signed my copy. I loved Redwall so much. It was a series I started reading with book 1 and then got to excitedly wait for the next installments. Those moments with a fantasy series that is aimed at kids are kinda precious to me in a world where most of the books I was required to read as a child were published well before I was born. But I suppose we live in a Harry Potter world largely where that was a given for a lot of people's childhoods. Are you excited about new Netflix series? See all the additional comments in this thread from other people about it being fantasy. Got me into reading as a child, and later writing. Same story for me, but with the Hobbit instead. There is a monster at the end of this book. It really led me on a journey to overcome my fears and deeply examine what it means to be a monster. Also, pulling really hard against Grover to turn the pages helped me get buff. Really, I was helping Grover face fears he was not ready to face. But we faced them together. One of my earliest memories was listening to this at story hour at the library as a 3-year-old and being absolutely terrified. I was crying by the end and the librarian sat down and talked with me about not needing to be afraid. And then she gave me the book. I was absolutely horrified. Having basically no possessions at that age, getting a gift was a huge deal, and TBH my first thought was, great, now I can escape this terrible thing, but the librarian's generosity and investment in me genuinely overcoming my fear just floored me. And so 20 years later I still have the book. Never expected to see this book make the list, but your analysis is perfect. I always thought it was a silly fake-out story, but it's absolutely about facing fears we're not ready to face. That was the book my dad used to teach me how to read. Also makes you realize that, oftentimes, the dreaded anticipation of something is worse than the thing itself. A true classic. A Brief History of Time. The insanity and complexity of the universe was explained in understandable terms. Bonkers. Hawking was a treasure. Not all pop science is as accessible, interesting, and meaningful as this. Also, Small Answers to the Big Questions, by Stephen Hawking. Hawking is a perfect example of how learning about the nature of reality leads you to a very spiritual place. Sagan was the same. Such an incredibly smart person whose articulation of very complex ideas is a huge inspiration to me. In the beginning the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. Came in to write this. I first read it at 13. 20 years later, I'm a software engineer at NASA. Books are powerful. I'm reading it kinda struggling though. I'm trying to understand everything he is saying and some things just don't make sense to me, so I spend a good 10 minutes a page. I'm dumb. I quit cold turkey with no issues after smoking a pack plus a day for 45 years. Carr's book is amazing, and highly recommended for anyone who wants to quit, along with r/stop smoking. Seriously though, I was so skeptical of that book, but I was so happy to be proven wrong. I'm 41 years old, and after all this time just thinking about this book can bring me to tears. I came here to say this. I've never had a book make me cry like that. And truly the best if you put your heart to it you can do it message I've ever read. A must-read for dog lovers. You evil son of a bitch, that's like saying Marley and Me or Old Yeller are good dog movies. There are, but you're leaving out some pressing details. Always been my favorite ever since I read it as a kid. Not only was it a beautifully described book, but that helped me realize that books are allowed to be sad and that sadness is a part of life. It's been a while since I've read it, so I could be exaggerating here. But if there was ever an example of gaining real-world emotional experience from a book, then this was it. I just finished Dune last week and bought the rest of the series right after. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy turned me from a non-reader into a casual reader, and now Dune turned me into a bookworm. It's so freaking good. Edit, if you're interested in starting Dune or have already, but are lost with the lore, this video does a great job of explaining everything without spoilers. Dune for me, as well. I picked it up at a school book sale in 8th grade, 13 years/0, and it blew my mind. I've been reading Michael Crichton for a few years, but Dune was sci-fi on a whole different level. It really opened my eyes to what literature could be. Yes, Dune is so good. I was reading it last year and I've read the rest of the series too. My kid refuses to read Bridge to Terabithia because the cover looks like the cover to Where the Red Fern Grows, and so it's probably sad. He's not wrong. First book to make me feel like I had just gotten kicked in the stomach. We were reading this as a class in 3rd grade, taking turns reading a page or paragraph out loud. One day all the desks had boxes of tissues on them when we came into reading class. We